There's this great image going around right now of Yusuf Dikec, 10-meter air pistol athlete from Turkey, in which he won the silver medal, looking absolutely cool as a cucumber, not wearing any sort of special gear, shooting the gun one-handed as is required, but then having his other hand in his pocket, looking extremely relaxed. People are talking about how cool he looks. People are talking about how they don't understand the sport or how he's able to be so accurate while looking as relaxed as he does. And then you also have, on the other end, you got a lot of naysayers, like the quote-unquote gun guys, talking about how stupid it is and how he looks stupid. What I want to talk about in this video is how Yusuf Dikec achieves the level of precision that he does shooting an air pistol at 10 meters looking as cool as he does. And you can too. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I've talked about this in previous videos before, but this is the standard of accuracy when it comes to 10-meter air pistol. The highest value scoring ring is a 10, and then there's also an inner 10 ring that is used for tiebreakers. The 10 ring has a diameter of 11.5 millimeters. The pellets you use are .177 pellets or 4.5 millimeters. So if you do the math on how difficult a shot it is to hit the 10 ring on a 10-meter air pistol target, it's a 5.4 minute of angle shot. So just for reference, it's harder to hit the 10 ring on a 10-meter air pistol target than it is to make a headshot at 100 yards with a pistol. So the max score in air pistol for a 60-shot course is 600 points. The athletes that are winning medals at the Olympics are shooting in the high 570s, low to middle 580s. So that means that they're hitting that 10 ring, they're making that headshot at 100 yards roughly 40 to 50 times. So just to reiterate, they're holding a 5.4 minute of angle group over 40 to 50 shots. And it's so funny when people talk about it because they say, oh, but they're not real guns. They're not real guns. Those people that say that don't know what they're talking about, frankly. They don't know how to shoot a handgun. They should be wholly ignored. I shoot this gun the exact same way that I shoot this gun. And with this gun, I can achieve groups that look like this at 10 meters. Pretty good group. And then using the exact same process that I use for shooting that air pistol, when I shoot this gun, I'm able to make a group at 50 yards that looks like this. So don't think that just because they're shooting an air pistol, their gun is some kind of special gun. The way you shoot a handgun is how you shoot a handgun, whether it's a 45 or an air pistol, and these two guns are basically on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of recoil. This one has a lot of recoil, this one has no recoil, it even has a compensator to reduce what little recoil there is, yet the process is the exact same for actually taking an accurate shot. And that process is very simple, and it has nothing to do with hunching over and looking like this. It has nothing to do with how quickly you can insert one of these into one of these. It has nothing to do with how fast you can tap, rack, bang, or do something in your workspace, right? That's one thing to say, your workspace. It has nothing to do with facial hair or tattoos or wearing a plate carrier or a Kevlar. It has everything to do with being able to pull the trigger straight to the rear without disturbing the sights while the sights are aligned and in line with the target. If you can do that, you can shoot upside down swinging from a tree, as long as you're pulling that trigger without disturbing the sights and making sure that the sights are aligned and in line with the target. Now, me personally, I am just fed up with how much bad content there is on YouTube that gets beginners started on the wrong path of focusing on things that have nothing to do with shooting. Like I said, reloading has nothing to do with shooting accurately. Gripping the gun and how you stand have very little to do with how accurately you can shoot a handgun. That's why Yusuf Dikec can look the way he does, standing completely relaxed, one hand on the gun, one hand in the pocket, and shoot a group that small at 10 meters. And that's because he knows how to pull that trigger straight to the rear without disturbing the sights and making sure that the sights are aligned and in line with the target when he does it. So let's go ahead and break that down into its component parts because I've already said it multiple times. When it comes to the fundamentals of shooting a pistol, we have trigger control at the very top. It's the most important fundamental. Anyone at the top level of shooting will tell you this. It doesn't matter if it's Gunny Brian Zins, Rob Latham, Doug Koenig, Jerry Miculek. If you cannot pull the trigger straight to the rear without disturbing the sights, you shouldn't even aim. You shouldn't even go to the range. You should just dry fire until you're able to do that. The second thing is going to be sight alignment. Sight alignment is making sure that that front sight post is centered in the rear sight notch and that the top edge of the front sight post is in line with the top edge of the rear sight. A very common saying to remember this is equal height, equal light. We have those two bars of light either side of the front sight post. Make sure those are even and make sure equal height that both the front sight post and the rear sight notch are at the same height. Now that we've achieved proper sight alignment, sight picture is when you take those aligned sights and you place them on the target where you want them. How your gun is zeroed and what you prefer is going to determine what your sight picture is going to look like, except for in the case of where you're focusing. For absolute precision, you want to focus on the front sight post. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Every one of the top level Olympic shooters, they are focusing on the front sight post for absolute precision. And anytime they aren't, they're not making a good shot. Now, for more combat style shooting, or as the target gets closer to you and the standard of accuracy balloons, trying to mag dump trash at 15 yards, which everyone seems obsessed with here on YouTube, then yeah, you can probably focus on the target and get away with it. But when you're trying to make headshots at 100 yards with a handgun, you need to be focusing on that front sight post and making sure all the time that it is perfectly centered in that rear sight notch all the way through the trigger break and after the bullet leaves the barrel. Now, everything I just said applies specifically to iron sights. If you are using a red dot sight, sight alignment is basically completely nullified. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to place that dot on the target unless your dot has a pretty bad parallax error, at which point you just need to make sure that dot is roughly centered in the window. You just have to worry about sight picture, and with the red dot, you want to focus on the target. You do not want to focus on the dot. However, when it comes to trigger control, the rule applies the same, and a red dot is even less forgiving when it comes to showing you everything that you're doing wrong. In fact, it's one of the greatest applications I think a red dot has, is its ability to show you all of the movement that you are putting into the gun when you break that shot. The other fundamentals of shooting a handgun are grip, stance, and also breathing. But if I were to rank them, I would have trigger control at the top, sight alignment number 2, sight picture number 3, and then 4 or 5 rungs under that, I would have grip and stance. Grip and stance are important because you need to have a way to actually hold the gun to pull the trigger and align the sights and stuff like that. So you need to have a grip. You need to obviously have a body position just by nature of being an entity that exists in the universe. You have a stance, a position. I think too much hot air is spilled on this when it comes to teaching novices here on YouTube. For most people, my advice is grip the gun in a way that is comfortable. And the only way that you're going to find the optimal grip for yourself is by dry firing and finding how you're able to grip the gun and place your trigger finger wherever that may be. I pull the trigger right here on the first joint of my index finger, and finding a way to consistently pull that trigger without disturbing the sights. So grip aids trigger control, sight alignment, and sight picture. It aids in consistency of trigger control, sight alignment, and sight picture. This is not going to make you a good shooter. Having a good grip is not going to make you a good shooter, and copying someone else's grip is not going to make you shoot like they do. The exact same thing applies with stance. Stance is going to widely vary from one person to the next. Starting out, the most important thing is finding a way to stand that is comfortable and helps you naturally align the gun on target. As far as the particularities of stance goes, there are different body positions and the different angles at which you can hold your arm, whether it's more bladed or more squared off to the target. That engages different muscles that can aid you in different ways. But for most people, novices starting out, start at, say, a 45-degree angle from your body, and that's a good starting point, and then you can kind of tweak it as you get better. Lastly, breathing control is a fundamental, but as far as pistol shooting goes, I think the most important thing is that you're breathing, right? As human beings, we have to breathe. We need to have oxygen. Where this comes into play mostly, this is more of a rifle shooting fundamental than it is a pistol shooting fundamental. In rifle positions like prone, for example, you have the ground pressed up against your body, and as you breathe in and out, your diaphragm of course expands and contracts, and that causes your gun to drop as you inhale and come back up as you exhale, at which point you want to break the shot. When it comes to pistol shooting, breathing doesn't affect your position as much, or your sight picture or sight alignment nearly as much as rifle shooting. The most important thing is making sure that your brain gets oxygen, and if you are going to hold your breath, that you aren't holding your breath too long. These last 3 fundamentals, grip, stance, breathing control, this is about as infinitely variable as it gets. Everyone has their own optimal way of how they think is the best to do this, and it even changes from one shot to the next as you get tired, as you use up muscles, as you fatigue. So I think you need to spend about 100% less mental energy thinking about your grip and your stance and your breathing, and spend a lot more energy focused on trigger control, sight alignment, and sight picture. Probably 90% of your energy needs to be going into focusing on sight picture, sight alignment, and trigger control. Now, last but certainly not least, the most important fundamental that I have purposefully neglected to mention, because I don't think it's just a fundamental of pistol shooting, but a fundamental of life, is follow-through. Follow-through is essentially having the discipline to follow through in everything that you do in not just pistol shooting, but life too, in your relationships, in your promises, in your career, in your hobbies, in your pursuits, in your goals. If you don't have the discipline, you'll never achieve success in any of those areas of your life. And that's why the other word we use for sports is discipline, because it's that discipline we use. So take a look at ourselves, identify what we're doing right, to make sure we're doing the right thing every time, to identify what we're doing wrong, and to cut those things out of our lives. But just from a mechanical standpoint of how follow-through applies to trigger control, sight alignment, sight picture, grip, stance, and breathing, is making sure that you have the discipline to pull through this trigger, and making sure that the sights are aligned through the shot, and making sure that you are achieving the exact same sight picture every single time, making sure that you're achieving the same exact grip every single time, standing the same way every single time, breathing the same way every single time, doing everything the exact right way that you have found to work the best, making sure you do it right every single time, identifying what you're doing wrong and making sure you don't do it again. And that's why in every single sport, pretty much, whether it's baseball, golf, boxing, I mean, you're taught how to swing a bat. You're not just taught to hit the ball and stop. You swing through the ball. When you're taught how to throw that ball, you don't just throw the ball and stop. You throw through the ball all the way through. When you throw a punch, you're not just hitting the bag and stopping. You're not just hitting your opponent and stopping. You are punching through the bag. You're punching through your opponent. And the same thing when it comes to shooting a handgun or shooting any gun for that matter. The problem we get hung up on is we don't think about this trigger the way we should be thinking about this trigger. People think of this trigger as a button that you press that makes the gun go off. And we're so used to buttons and switches in our everyday life, we just press it, it turns the lights on, whatever, turns the blender on. This is not a button that makes the gun go off. This is the main primary motion when it comes to shooting. This is your stroke in golf. This is swinging a baseball bat. This is throwing a ball. This is throwing a punch. This is the most important thing, and we need to learn to properly pull through this trigger in a smooth, consistent way, and holding it there until that bullet has left the barrel, and also making sure that as the gun goes through recoil, that we're keeping those sights aligned as perfectly as we can, and then after the gun has come back down on target, making sure that we acquire the exact same sight picture, the exact same sight alignment. We're coming off that trigger, and then we're getting right back on it, applying that same trigger control all the way through. It's really sad that follow-through is one of these things that is not talked about at all here on YouTube. Everyone wants to talk, again, about all the bing bing wahoo, you know, instant gratification stuff of pinging steel and mag dumping in the trash at 15 feet. I think there's only 2 videos that talk about follow-through here on YouTube. One is from Keith Sanderson, Olympic gold medalist in the 25-meter rapid-fire discipline. The other is from Gunblue 490 in his excellent How to Shoot a Handgun series. After you watch this video and you're still interested in learning more about this stuff in depth, I'd really recommend watching Gunblue 490's video on the same subject. It's fantastic. Now, with that said, follow-through is the most important aspect of shooting a handgun by far. It's the most important aspect in life, and one of the ways you can start following through right now is practicing with dry fire. Right now, I would recommend you take your gun, you unload it, you point it at a blank wall, and you start dry firing. Take everything I just taught you about aligning the sights, and you pull that trigger until there is no movement in your front sight post as the shot breaks. If it does this, or it does this, or it does that, try again. Keep trying again until the shot breaks and the sights do not move at all. And then once you've done that, do it 1,000 more times, and 10,000 more times, and 20,000 more times. For reference of how much I dry fire, about a month ago I watched the entirety of The Sopranos, and the entire 86-hour runtime, I had a gun in one hand and I was dry firing. Every time Janice came on screen, I was dry firing at her, but mostly I was dry firing on a spot in the corner of my screen. That's 86 hours of dry fire, and that's not even all that I do. I dry fire all the time, probably several hours a day. It's part of the reason why I like RuneScape so much, because I can play RuneScape in one hand and I can dry fire in the other. And the thing is, even just sitting here and learning how to pull that trigger smoothly, confidently, straight to the rear without disturbing the sights, this helps commit that muscle memory to your subconscious. This is a good exercise. Dry firing against a blank wall is a great exercise for sight alignment. And then last but not least, bringing it all together, putting a little dot on the wall and dry firing with your sights aligned against that black dot on the wall and tying it all together is how you're going to become a great shooter, how you're going to shoot like Yusuf Dikec, and you can look really cool while you do it. Or Bill McMillan. Bill McMillan is probably one of the reasons why I got into bullseye shooting. He looks great. You can make a bronze statue out of this guy shooting like that. In any case, thank you all for watching. I'm going to have a few more videos talking about Olympic shooting and why they use some of the gear they do, why they use air guns and stuff like that. Thank you to my channel members for supporting the channel directly. You too can become a member by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you are interested in bullseye pistol or interested in me talking more about it, you can go ahead and click on this video right here to learn more about it.